Hi everyone, it's Carla. I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be showing you how to add a tulle skirt to a leotard, specifically like this where you sew it on top of the fabric. I'm in love with how this turned out and I can't wait for you all to try it. So for this tutorial you will need a sewing machine, but don't worry, I also refer you to other videos if you only have a serger or if you prefer to use your serger. I think it would be really cute that way too. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright everyone, so for this tutorial we are going to need our handy dandy sewing machine. I rarely bring this puppy out, but we're going to need her today. And then whatever you prefer to sew your garments on. I got my serger out. Today we're using the Brother 1034D, my personal favorite. I have this one all on black thread because today we're going to make the black Leo. But to start, I'm actually going to tell y'all how to gather your tulle, your mesh, whatever you want to call it. Here's mine. And all I did was cut 2 strips the whole width of the fabric. So there's no fancy math here. However wide your mesh fabric is how much you want to cut it, and I cut it along the stretchy side. This mesh isn't as stretchy, but you can tell there's barely any stretch this way and more stretch this way. So cut it on the stretchy side. And then I cut one at 5 inches and one at 6 inches wide, just to give it a little bit of dimension. And now all I'm going to do is place them on top of one another and get to gathering them up. Now, if you watched any of my previous videos, you can gather with your serger if you'd like, but I prefer to do it this way just so there's, I don't know, less needle holes. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and start. All I'm going to do is place them on top of one another, right like this, and make sure the edges are lining up. And as you can tell, one is 5 inches and one is 6 inches. But anyways, I do like doing 2 layers just because I feel like it gives that tutu effect. If you've seen tutus, you normally like tons and tons of layers. Let me go ahead and move y'all to the machine. Alright, so if you've never gathered with your sewing machine, I prefer to use just a straight stitch. I'm either going to use 0 or 1. I prefer 1, it just moves the needle a little bit. It's just a straight stitch, and we're going to make sure that the stitch length is as high as it goes. Mine goes all the way to 5, so a long stitch length is all we need. And I do have some black thread up here, but I only have preloaded white, so it doesn't matter because we're going to remove these threads in the end. But all I'm going to do is sew down the whole length of these strips, making sure that they are lined up on this edge. And I'm going to do it at about a 1/2 inch, maybe a little more, like 5/8 on my machine is what I'm seeing. And we're not going to backstitch or anything. We are just going to sew the whole width of this, the whole length down this strip. So it is going to take a little bit of while, but you can just zoom through it. And I do have a walking foot on my machine. That's what this whole big chunk of thing is. But if you don't have one, you can definitely try it out first on your tulle. And if it's not working, just slap some tissue paper underneath the tulle, and that'll give you just more control and more make it easier. Like your machine won't eat the fabric, but for me this walking foot does wonders. And I'm just going to sew along everything, and once I'm done sewing all the way to the end, I'll come back. Okay, so now that I'm at the edge, I'm just going to lift my needle up and pull it and pull this out just as long as I need. I always forget my scissors, so I just use my trusty rotary cutter. But if you look in the back, it gathered up nicely for us. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a pretty nice gather, not gonna lie. But if you need to adjust it, all you need to do is pick one color of these threads. I always forget which one's better. I think think the black one, the needle thread, is better than the bobbin thread. Yeah, if you just pick the needle thread, you can adjust the gathers as well, but these look perfect for our purposes today. I don't want them to be too gathered up either. Just a nice little tulle skirt for our Leo. So we're going to put this aside, and now I'm going to construct the whole leotard using my brother cover stitch. I do have a video on this particular pattern, the hibiscus. It's titled How to Make an Off-Shoulder Top. But this time we're going to do the bodysuit version. So here it is, and quick tip, I don't like getting too many pieces for pattern, so I just add this to the bottom and then flip it up whenever I need to cut the other side. And then another tip for the hibiscus, it does come, Petite Stitchery does make their own bell sleeve add-on, so get the bell sleeve add-on. And then they do say to add it to this 3/4 line, but I just add it to the half sleeve line. I think that is long enough. We don't want our sleeve to, to consume like our whole arm, you know what I mean? The whole hand. Like, I like it to just lay on the wrist. That's just my personal preference. And then I also like to downsize on the bell just for that extra security. I don't know, I feel like it just looks better if the bell sleeve is like hanging around here versus like you can't even see your kid's hand. That's just my personal preference. And then again, just another preference of mine. Whenever I need bands, whether they're leg bands or a waistband, I always use the Bummies bands from B&B. What is that? What does that stand for? I forgot. Big Noggin. From Big Noggin, I always use their leg cuffs just for any of my projects. It just streamlines sizing for me. And then I do everything else the same. So now I'm going to make this bodysuit, and I'm going to kind of go through it quickly. But if you want a more in-depth tutorial, then go check out my how to make an off-shoulder top. And that'll be that. So let me get this out of the way so I can instruct y'all on what I'm going to do. I'm just gonna go through the steps really quick. But you're going to want to place your two bodysuit pieces, Leo pieces, right sides together, and sew down the sides. Side 1, side 2. And then also sew the crotch together. So you're gonna, I have noticed that the front crotch is longer than the back, but just go ahead and sew this up. And that'll be for that. And then of course, we have our sleeves. So for the sleeves, just make sure they're right sides together and sew it down here. For both of them. Bam, bam. We have our little neckband. We also want to sew that right sides together down there. Same with our leg cuffs. Sew them down right sides together on the raw edges. And then we just have our little flares here that we can add to the sleeves. So I'm going to go ahead and construct this pattern. Again, it's really easy once you have the Leo portion. Once you have the Leo portion all sewn up, it's just about adding the leg bands, sewing on the arms, and then adding the neckband. So super quick. And then once that's finished, I'll go back to the adding the tulle part to it. And then, believe it or not, that'll be it for this video. Okay, so for this next part, I just grabbed my Bummies pattern so that I know where I want the tulle to start. But before we do that, we have to measure out how much of this tulle we're going to need. So what I like to do is just place it on top. Make sure that the Leo is, about as stretched as it can be. So I'm just going to go like this and leave about a ½ inch at the end, and then fold it in half and see about where I need to cut off. So I did that, and now this is about where I need to cut off. But I want to make sure that I don't lose these threads at the end, so I'm going to pull out the threads first and then cut. So I'm going to put a pin here just so that I don't mess it up and forget where that marking is. Just right here. And then, like I mentioned, I'm just going to pull these out so that we don't lose the threads. Okay, so this is what it should look like. You have 4 threads and your tool pieces. And like I mentioned, I added this here. I mean this pin here, but now we're going to take it out. And you want to find the center front of this. I'll put a pin in the center front. And then we want to take our bummies pattern, just to kind of gauge where this is going to go. So I just place it like this, and again, this top part is where we want the tool to start. So I'm going to put it right at the edge there, and just attach it. So make sure you're only grabbing one layer of your Leo. You don't want to pin both sides, so we're just pinning it to one side. And then I'm going to go towards the back, like this. And this kind of ungathered, so I'm really just going to gather it a little bit more. Same with this side. And I actually like that they are overlapping instead of serging the edges together. Again, just personal preference. You can either serge the edges together or overlap them like I'm doing. So I'm just gathering a little bit to kind of make sure it fits in the space. That's why we wanted these threads still here. And then once I'm done with that and how I like it, I'm just going to use my pattern again, kind of gauge where it should go. And then I'm going to add another pin, and again, only pin it to the back side. We don't want to pin both layers of this velvet, or whatever fabric you're using. So there's how that looks. Or this is essentially how it's going to look when we're done, but we want to make sure that we keep pinning in different spots. Now I do have another video of how to add a skirt to a leotard, so if you want to do that method, you can go ahead and look at that. With that method, you just chop your Leo in half and then serge the skirt in between those 2 layers. So you can definitely do it that way. But I feel like this just adds some more dimension to the skirt, and it's not just sandwiched in between our fabrics, you know? And then all that's left to do once you pin everything is we are going to sew it, but this time we're going to use a stretch stitch. So for my machine, we have a number 3, which is my lightning bolt stitch. That's my favorite, but whatever stretch stitch you normally use, you could use this as well, the zigzag. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to attach it once all my pins are in. Okay, so on my machine, this comes out, so it just makes it a lot easier to do this step. So all I'm going to do now is put the Leo in through the neckband. Now I did want to note that if you don't feel comfortable doing this, or you feel like you're going to mess up, you can actually sew the tool on before you're constructing your whole Leo. You could add it on to the front and back before you start. Or you could add it on before you close the crotch and add everything else. So it just depends on what you're comfortable with, but I prefer to just have the Leo finished and then do this as the last step. And I'm going to start in the back and just place everything under here. And the only important part here is that you want to make sure, 1, that you're removing your pins, please remove your pins, and 2, that you just follow along on that line that you already created. So that's a lot easier. And then I'm also leaving these in so that I know what to pull out once I'm all done. So I'm just going to go ahead and place everything underneath. Sorry, I always run into my tripod. I'm going to place everything underneath and make sure that I'm lined up right there. It doesn't have to be exact because this next stitch isn't a straight stitch, but just relatively close, as close as you can. And then I'm just going to go ahead and backstitch to start, and then I'm just going to go for it all around. And again, make sure you're removing your pins, 1, and 2, make sure that you're just following along as closely as you can to that line, but it doesn't have to be exact. And then also make sure that you're just pushing the tulle layers down and not really shifting them around, because you want to make sure that the gathers are going to stay there. So here's a pin, I'm going to remove it and just keep going all the way around, and then I'll come back once I'm done with that. Okay, so I made it all the way around, and I'm just going to pull everything out with my needle up. I finally got my scissors, so I'm going to cut everything. Here's what that looks like. Now the last step, I am going to try and remove some of these threads, just because it looks a little wonky with everything. So that is the last step. All I'm going to do is just pull on them and kind of pick here and there once everything. So like this one, oh sorry, you can't even see. With this thread, if you just pull it, everything starts coming out. And I know that this is the gathered thread, not the other thread. So just keep pulling and moving everything around, and you should be able to get it all out. If you don't want to do this step, then I would just stick to one thread color, or, you know, just try to make it so that everything was sewn right on top of each other, and then you don't have to do this step. I like to do this just so that there isn't as much thread showing, you know, all crazy. But that is basically the last step, and then you'll have your skirted Leo and whatnot. Let me see if I can flat lay this a lot better to show you. Alright, here is what it looks like. And that is it for this video. Again, if you want to try a different method, I do have another video on how to add a skirt to a leotard. So you can look that up, as well as my how to make an off-shoulder top for the construction of this. But that is it for this video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.